So this is the second of my recent half price grabs. This is a special issue Eaglemoss model, and this is a Runabout, which I think was first seen in Deep Space Nine. They did appear in Next Generation from time to time as well, and because Deep Space Nine, being set on a space station, didn't really have a hero starship as such to call its own. So what they did was they gave them these beefed up shuttles, which were termed runabouts, and this is the USS Orinoco. There was the Rio Grande and I think the Yangtze or something like that. I think it was a Chinese river name. They're all river names basically, and they lost them from time to time and then got new ones to replace them. As you can see on the outside of the box already, this one's the one with the I think with the sort of torpedo launcher. They launch these little sort of micro photon torpedoes from a Defiant style roll bar attachment. Some of them, not all of the runabouts had those. I can't remember if they all got them added at some point or if it's just a sort of mission specific module type option. So they were quite spacious as a shuttle type craft, auxiliary craft go, because they had a sort of a wardroom kind of area behind the actual cockpit area, which obviously normal shuttles from starships wouldn't have. So they were shown, doing various exploratory roles and sort of escort roles. Didn't help ships massively, but they did have reasonable numbers of phases on them and transport facilities, replicators. So they were quite well equipped for sort of reasonable length jaunts, and they conveniently enough fitted inside the Deep Space Nine hangars, so they took off from little launch pads on the ring of Deep Space Nine. So let's have a look at this one. It wasn't strictly on my list of hero ships to get, I must admit, but nevertheless, they were new for their time when they came out. I'll show you this actually. This is unusual in the sense that when I looked at the yesterday's Enterprise NCC-72905 a few moments ago, it was a special issue as well, and this is also a special issue, but you'll see that this magazine is much bigger because it doesn't even fit in frame. So I'll just move the Runabout out of the way for a moment. So it's a standard A4 size magazine, whereas if you compare with the Enterprise C magazine, despite the fact that they came in the same sized boxes, you'll see that's much smaller. So I'm not really sure why they went for that as an option, but I haven't looked at those yet, but I will do in due course, as I always do. And I have to say, I mean, sometimes you get these ships just in their boxes without the magazines, but the magazines do add quite a lot. And I think that's it's obviously what makes this sort of collection more worthwhile. So there she is. So there's the Orinoco, and that's rather good. It feels nice and sturdy. So let me just have a look at her now. So obviously it's an unusual design because it's very sort of chunky, but it's got almost sort of Galaxy class style nacelles, but they're quite sort of closed in. There's got a little bit of a wing to it. They've got two impulse engines at the rear there. Now, I thought this was a torpedo pod, but maybe looking at it, I'm not entirely sure if I'm convinced of that. The reason I say that is because if it is a torpedo pod, it's got no aft element to it, but it may be that it just fires forwards. It's either that or it's a sensor pod of some description. But as I say, not all of the runabouts had this. Some of them just had a sort of a straight back here. They didn't have these strut elements to hold the top element on. This feels, it's a little bit more plasticky than average, I would say. There's some weight to it somewhere, but it does feel a little bit more plasticky than some of them. I'm not quite sure why. I think this top area here, this is cold to the touch. That's metal. That's the die-cast area at the top here. So I think maybe the sort of spine area is metal, and that's giving it some weight. It's just that where I'm holding it is more the plastic area. So obviously the cockpit is, as you'd expect, sort of down the front here, and I think in this sort of section here is where there's all the wardroom is, and I guess there must be impulse and sort of warp, little mini warp reactor or whatever in there to give it a bit of oomph. So we saw these used in the early days of Deep Space Nine before the Defiant arrived on the scene, and it had some encounters with the Jem'Hadar at various points as it was used to travel initially into the Gamma Quadrant to go and have a look-see at what was there, basically. So I was going to get it stand together. Quite a big beefy stand as well, actually. It's maybe the biggest stand I've ever seen. Probably because it's quite a solid model. I'm really hoping that's going to fit in a bit better than that, because that's not going to hold it. Okay. Let's try that. I'm assuming it is going to sit on there. Alright, there we are. That's quite a nice profile. So you can see it's quite a complex little ship. I mean, in the Next Generation, the shuttles were always quite sort of plain and white and not massively exciting to look at, but you can tell that they intended to do a little bit more work with the runabouts, and so obviously they seem to have taken a little bit more care and thought in the design of this particular ship. And it's got a lot more detailing on it than the sort of the Enterprise shuttles used to have. And the warp nacelles are more sort of convincingly workmanlike than the typical sort of not lit, not particularly colourful versions that you saw on the smaller shuttlecraft. So it does seem like it's a more sort of workmanlike, workhorsey type auxiliary craft as compared to your average Federation shuttle. And they seemed to be quite effective in combat. I mean, they went up against the Marquis Raiders from time to time. Had a few run-ins with them. I think some of them even got their roll bars blown off from time to time, which was quite entertaining. So as I say, it wasn't really a ship I was intending to get, but it was half price, and so I couldn't really say no to it. And it does mean that now it can sit alongside the Defiant as part of my sort of Deep Space Nine large craft collection. Even if it may not be an XL technically, but it feels like one, which is quite nice to see a smaller craft be that big. They've not skimped on it, which I think is. I mean, none of this stuff scales worth a damn, because obviously they can't make things to scale, because otherwise it would look daft. But it's nice to see one at this sort of size. You can actually appreciate the detail that went into it, despite it only being one of the smaller craft. So yeah, nice addition to the collection, that one. So what I've got to do now is actually build the IKEA furniture to put it into at some point. That's a job for another day, or maybe later today if I'm feeling up to it. So there you go. So that's the USS Orinoco, and I'm going to move on to some of the smaller examples that I got in this particular offer now for your viewing pleasure. So I will catch you very shortly. Cheers.